We'll get into all that.
Yeah, no, whatever you want, man. Go for it, yeah.
Easy. Bogues, thanks for joining me. How you going?
Good to be here finally. We've been trying to set it up for a little while.
That's right, mate. I didn't want to use you too early though, as we were talking about when the podcast started. Didn't want to get the big dogs in too early, so we've been working towards you, mate. You come to the game the other week against the Dons. How'd you find the game at People First Stadium?
It was actually quite good. I liked it. I'm a Bomber fan, so you guys touched us up a little bit. Had a feeling it was going to go that way because we just thought we were cruising a little bit too early, and you guys just were hanging around. But you guys played really well. But I enjoyed it. It was almost a sellout. I think it was
not too far off.
Very
not too
close.
far off. Yeah.
I think it was a couple of grand under. And I like small stadium environments better than big. I don't like. I mean, the MCG and all that kind of stuff. I get it. But as a fan, I like going to smaller stadiums. You can see more, you're more engaged, everything's a bit closer. So I like your 20, 30, 40,000 seaters, and I had a really good time. The kids came to their first AFL game. They had a really good time as well. So it was good. Got them yelling, yelling stuff during the game. Like at the start, they're like, because they're seeing other people in the crowd starting to yell stuff, and I'm like, yeah, you can yell. Come on, yell. And then they just wouldn't. And then by the third quarter, they started yelling stuff and then looking around. So it was kind of really cool just to be in that atmosphere.
Oh, fully into it. That's gross. Was that your first time at the stadium?
I think it was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, at the footy stadium, it was. Yeah. So at an actual footy game, it was my first game. Second. I actually came to a game when Gary first signed out here. My mates are high-end season ticket holder with the Geelong Cats.
Yep.
So they came for the first game. Gary played up here versus the Cats. So I came up to that one as well, but there was maybe 6,000 people there. Yeah. No, probably about 10,000. They're all Cat fans back then, but there's a bit more Gold Coast fans now.
And just didn't have the opportunity to get the kids to games in Melbourne because you're an Essendon ticket holder?
I'm an Essendon fan. I wouldn't say I'm a ticket holder at the moment. I've kind of, they've been in a little bit of a rut. But no, we didn't really. The kids were too young. They're only 5 and 7 now. So back then, there's no way I'd take a kid to an AFL game at 2-3 years old. Like, I'm not that guy. And it's kind of an ordeal in Melbourne to get down there. And, we live 30, 40 minutes from the city when we live there. So we never really got down there. But that's why I'm saying I love the small stadium. I love, the Gold Coast. Great drive in, drive out. It was pretty easy, pretty flawless. I thought it'd be harder to get in and out. To be honest, it wasn't too bad. And I'm a big fan of those smaller kind of arenas. Yeah.
And one thing mate, super pumped to have you on, and being a basketball fan from early days, I played basketball before I even picked up a footy. A sport that you can probably start a bit earlier than you can here, as opposed to Auskick. Like, you get the basketballs out at the local leisure centre and you're playing all your domestics. So growing up, you're getting picked up. I think I've touched on it with you before. You had the purple basketballs that had your jersey on them when you got drafted to Milwaukee. I had one of those. I had the purple Bucks jersey. Yeah. I want to touch on how that all started, but earlier on, like grassroots, like what was home life like? You were in Melbourne there. Was basketball always the number one, or did you play a bunch of different sports?
I played a lot of sports socially, so not organised, but just with mates at school, or we used to kind of play whatever was on TV. So like when the cricket was on, we'd get cricket bats and bins out the front of the house, during the summer and play cricket, and then January would roll around and it'd be tennis. We'd start playing tennis across the street. So we used to just play what we saw on TV. So I just picked up a lot of my sporting kind of prowess or skill transferred from multiple different sports of just handling a tennis ball, a soccer ball, a basketball, footy. Played a fair bit of footy as well. So all winter, you turn TV on, it's footy. Yep. So from April to September, I was in the street kicking a footy, till the sun came down and it went dark. So I played a lot of stuff, but as far as organised, I started with gymnastics first, funnily enough, because my sister was in that. She was 5 years older. I got thrown into that, hated it, and then did some taekwondo kind of martial arts that most kids, at least with a European background, get into at some point in their life, get that aggression out. And then I did Vic kick when it was Vic kick. It wasn't Oz kick back then. It was still Vic kick, so it shows my age in the 90s, and did a lot of the Vic kick stuff. And then it was like, okay, do I go into footy? But I really like basketball. And then I told my parents, like, I want to play basketball, and I think they were like, well, you changed sports 3 or 4 times now, like, this is it. We're not doing it again. It's expensive. And I think deep down they loved it because footy, mud, winter, Melbourne, getting in the car all dirty, all that kind of stuff. Mum's cold. basketball's team a little bit better. You got a roof on your head, like it's not as so. I think they love that change, and then that was kind of all she wrote from then.
How were you at footy? And I'm assuming ruck or no gross, but yeah.
It was just I didn't really play organised, so it was mainly just Vic kick. But yeah, I thought I was capable. I can handle the footy pretty decently for a guy my height, just because I played a lot in the street, man. Like I think footy is a game, as you'd know, that you do need to handle that ball a lot because there's a lot of nuances with the ball, the way it bounces, and you know, all that kind of stuff, the way it flows. So I did a lot of that just because I love playing footy in the street. You know, and I'd go down to local oval and play and just play by myself or play with a couple of mates and have goal kicking competitions and all that. So I'm okay. I can definitely handle the ball and take grabs and that stuff. I've got pretty good hands with that kind of stuff. So I obviously would have been some sort of ruck or, you know, utility as far as that goes. Maybe put me up forward, you know, down the line. But yeah, I can definitely take some grabs with the ball.
Yeah, and then so you transition to basketball. I wasn't good enough to make it, but go through all the under 16 state trials and stuff. And the story that they always used to run was, if you don't make the team, don't make too much of a fuss, because Andrew Bogut didn't make the under 16 state side, I think it was.
18s, yeah.
18s. And then can you talk me through the progression it was so not making that state side. So when did it all start to come to fruition and you really start to turn the corner with basketball to then going and playing the under 19s Australia side, was it?
Yeah. My journey just happened within, 12 to 18 months. Everything changed for me. I was kind of always middle of the pack all throughout juniors, even kind of towards the lower. Got cut from Dandenong under 16s. I got put into the third team, I think, in bottom age. And then I left after that season and went to Waverley for a season, then went to Sandringham for 2 seasons, and then tried out for the under 18 state team as a top age. My first invite to a state tryout, and did okay. Like I was, you're playing against all these household names that are all the bee's knees of juniors, right? You hear all these names from this guy's from out this country way, or this guy's from Sale, this guy's from, there was a guy, Dave Fanning, who actually played for the Collingwood Magpies back in the day, a couple of games as well, who was always the big guy that was in my spot, and then tried out and made the 12, so made emergency, but didn't make the 10. So if someone got hurt, I got to go to the Nationals. But the beauty of that was I got to train with the team the whole way up to the Nationals. So I think we started around about Chrissy. I think the whole process started maybe just after. And then the Nationals were in June. So you train every weekend, Saturdays, Sundays, pretty much. Play some games every now and then along there. And then you get sent off in June. If someone's hurt, I get to go. Obviously, no one ever gets hurt in those bloody things. So, but the beauty of it was I got to train with all those guys. And then I felt like by the time they took off in June to go, even though I couldn't go, I felt like I was one of the best players on the team. But I couldn't go because I was an emergency. Because, you can't swap it at that point. Parents would lose their minds, all the fundraising stuff. And then that's when my journey started. It was I put a lot of time and work in with an individual coach that my parents found for me, and then got a random invite to the under-19 national camp, selection camp. And you generally don't get picked in those unless you're in the Nationals, because like the Australian scouts, from Canberra, they just go on to the Nationals and they see all the national, state teams, and you pick from there. You're not going to go pick out because logically you say the best players from that state are in this tournament. So I got this basically a wild card invite saying we've followed your progression in the junior system in the Victorian Rep League, and we want to give you an invite to come up and just participate in the camp. And was changed everything for me, because it was finally there was some reward for all the work I've put in. I thought, you think no one's watching, I put all this work in, no one's watching, and then go to that camp, and the first day of camp they offered me a scholarship, which was, they never really do that, and they sat me down and said, I just came in like a bat out of hell, I was trying to kill everyone. I knew all the Victorian kids obviously because they made it over me, so I was trying to kill all them, and then there was all the other kids from other states that I didn't know who they were. I didn't give a shit. They were supposed to be household names from Sydney or Queensland or Perth. I couldn't give a shit, just trying to kill. And they saw that and offered me a scholarship spot to the AIS on the spot, and then ended up going through that whole process. And that under-19 team, was that gold? Gold, yeah. We won gold in 2003. So I went to the AIS in 2002 was my first year, and second year was 2003, half of that year. And that group predominantly stayed together for 18 months, and we transitioned that into just an unbelievable run to win the first gold medal ever, and still the only one, I believe, in the under-19 level for Australia ever.
That's awesome. And then the next step is college, which you went to Utah. Mm-hmm. What's that process like? And then the realization of the next step is moving to the other side of the world.
Yeah, I kind of always wanted to look. I didn't think I was going to be an NBA player. People always ask that question. When do you think you're going to be an NBA player? I was like, I didn't. I was like, if I played it professionally anywhere in the world, I would have been happy to make money playing basketball. And NBL was obviously a kind of something that I thought was achievable. But as I progressed in that 18 months, as I got better and better each month, it was like, I might be better than that. I might have surpassed that level. And I thought the next step, let's go to college, which is against the best young kids in the world or the US at the time, and see where I'm at. Let's battle against them for a year or two and see if that gets me better again. And then maybe who knows what happens. And that's exactly what happened. I was playing against better players and then had to work my way back up to being one of the better players on the team. And they recruited me in 02, 03 and ended up going over there. And that was tough in itself. There was a lot of adversity there. You move to the other side of the world. You think, I was living in Canberra for 18 months. So I thought, oh shit, I've lived away from home for 18 months. I'm fine. I'll be fine. Parents are just a phone call away. But then once you're on the other side of the world, it's a whole different story. You forget that back then it was $5 a minute to call on a phone, right? So I couldn't afford to call home more than once or twice a month. I'd try to sneak into the coach's offices sometimes, which was illegal per NCAA rules, to use the phone. That was even illegal.
Back then?
Yeah, that's how strict it was. Because it was looked as an added benefit. So I'd sometimes sneak in without them knowing and call home and just say hello or whatever. But the time differences, a lot of times you're at work or they're sleeping. So it was just a nightmare to cure homesickness, and it really, really hit me hard there. But that's just something that you had to push through to build resiliency and get through. And then I also had one of the hardest coaches in the history of college basketball my freshman year, in Rick Majerus, late Rick Majerus, who's now passed away. But he was he made you question whether you wanted to play basketball on a daily basis. I saw 3 or 4 kids that were really good talents from respective states that they've come from. One of the best high school players in their states come to Utah, and within a couple of months quit basketball and moved back home. Or one guy ended up in the mountains with a beard smoking weed. It was insane what this guy could do to you. Could absolutely break people, and that was a part of trying to build through that and get to the next level.
Yeah, you speak about your progression and how you got better. Do you reckon that's just due to putting yourself up against the next best talent, or were there other things that you were doing, or were you just getting better and developing through playing the game?
A mix of everything. I think the biggest thing was I knew I loved the game more than anyone at a young age. I genuinely love the game. You got kids that their parents say, oh, they love the game of basketball, they're outside shooting, and I'm like, no, I'm that guy. I'm outside nonstop. Whenever there's a pickup game, I'll be there. I would go hang out at basketball stadiums sometimes, hoping that teams had, because sometimes if the older boys didn't have enough players, if they had 4, they'd just grab a younger guy that just played him and just come with us just so we can play the game, because otherwise the game gets cancelled. I'll just hang around, just be like, hopefully someone needs, and most weekends you get an extra game or two in under 20s when I'm 12 years old. I'm like, who cares? It's great. So I knew I put the work in and I loved the game. And then it was just a matter of I wanted to be uncomfortable with getting my ass kicked. I was like, I want to go to the US and get my ass kicked. I need to get my ass kicked. I without sounding arrogant, I got to a point where I was in Australia and I was like, I'm up the top echelon here now in Australia at my age. This isn't good for me. I identified that early. I'm like the guys below me are getting more out of this than I am. I need to go somewhere where I'm in that level, the middle level, where there's guys above me that I'm trying to peck to get, trying to punch up to get to them, to get to that top level. And I knew that early. I knew I wouldn't get better staying. Some people see that as they love being the top dog. I'll just stay in Australia. I'm the man, I'm the rock star, whatever. But I was like, nah, I want to get my ass kicked and see how far this thing goes. Maybe I'll get to the NBA. And then it just happened so quickly that I ended up getting there.
That's high level thinking for an 18-year-old. Is there a mentor back then, or were your parents familiar with how the sporting landscape worked back then, or it just seems like they're quite advanced thoughts to be having as an 18-year-old, or have you always just thought bigger picture from early days?
I don't think it was anyone in particular. I think it's just our kind of the way we are, our family, obviously Croatian background, stubborn, hot-blooded, will fight you, and it was always kind of, our thing was always the next thing. Like, what's the next thing? And that's the athlete's mentality, right? Like, all athletes have that next day mentality thing. Like, what do I have next? What do I have to accomplish next? What do I have to win next? And that can help you and hurt you. It can also hurt you in your afterlife from sport, because then you retire and you're like, shit, like, I need to fight someone, I need to do something. So, but that was just kind of our mentality with our family, with kind of what we endured as historically our family and our bloodline of migrating and wars and all that kind of shit. I think coming into that, it just fit perfectly with sport. And I was always trying to look at the better thing. And I was always like, there's always someone better than me. And I always had that fear of like, there's someone better than me and I need to keep working to try and get to where they're at.
Yeah. And whilst we're on the college stuff, so you speak about the move and everyone goes, oh, well, they're going over to college. Like, you got the parties, you got the girls, all those temptations. Due to how hard you said the move was and how the coach tested you out, whether you really wanted to be there or not, was it just strictly basketball while you were over there, or did the college lifestyle, supposed lifestyle, creep into the...
No, I strategically chose Utah for that reason. I got a lot of shit for going there because people are like, what are you going to Utah for? Like, boring. And I was like, that's what I want to go. I want to go focus on basketball. Like, I knew, look, I wasn't too much of a partier. I definitely have some fun and did some crazy stuff when I was a kid, but I wasn't one of those kids that was like, every Friday, Saturday, I got to get on the piss and party when I'm 16, 17. It just wasn't, because I had training Saturdays and I was kind of in a good routine and I enjoyed that. But with college, it's, you know, I knew like, okay, maybe I go to UCLA or I go to one of these Florida, University of Miami, and then who knows, like, you get distracted by shit, right? And I was never really distracted by, I was really late developer with girls and that kind of stuff, which was good. I was really focused, like, basketball was my girl. Sounds stupid, but back then you seem like a loser, right? When you're 15, 16, your mates are trying to go out and find girls. I wasn't really interested in that. I was kind of like focused on basketball. And that stuff all takes care of itself down the line. But yeah, with college, it was just focus on basketball. And like, you know, look, wherever you are in the world, if you want to find trouble, you'll find trouble. That's one thing I've learned. Like, whether you're in Utah, whether you're in Alaska, Antarctica, if you want to find trouble and you want to find bad shit to do, you can find it. Like, that's the one thing. But obviously some of those other cities, it's a bit more easier and a bit more normalized. And so whenever I got bored in Utah, I'd go shoot. So like, all right, bored, nothing to do. I'd go get the keys to the arena. I'd have keys to the locker room, keys to the arena, turn the lights on, go shoot, you know. And I think that really helped as far as all that. And then there's just no time also with classes, with study. I had a job at one point because I had no money and I was dead broke, like, which was ridiculous in itself, because I was selling my jersey in the bookstore, in the sports store, and I can't make $1 out of it because of the NCAA rules back then. It's not like it is today where guys are getting paid. So there just wasn't time to even go through all that stuff. You were, you know, with our coach, it was only supposed to be 15 to 20 hours a week on court per NCAA rules. We were way past that. When you factor in film and all that, we were breaking all the rules, which is illegal. We had to sign all these forms saying like we're under 20 hours, and we were just like laughing. Like, there's no fucking chance. Like, we're way past that. So there's just no time to do some of that extra stuff. After a game, you'd go out and have some fun. Like, you have a big game on a you know, you have all your class, your trainings, your grind of that week. You have a big win on Saturday. You're kind of the heroes of the campus. You go to like some campus parties and have some fun, and that was about it. But I didn't go too crazy with it.
I still find that dynamic so crazy. Where did they give you a stipend back then, like an allowance?
Nah, so the way it worked back then was if you lived on campus, you got zero money. If you lived on campus, which my first year I did, you get board, all your food's paid, like you got the dining hall as much as you want, swipe in, swipe out, but you get no money, right? But everything's paid for. You don't pay for anything. But if you want to go take a girl out, you got no money. So then I was like, you know, young geniuses, right? You're like, oh, if you move off campus, they give you a stipend to pay for your rent and your food. You're like, oh, that's great. I've got money in my pocket. You think you're a little hero. Yeah. And it was like $700 or $800 a month. Right. For rent and food and car and petrol if you have a car and petrol. I ended up getting a car my second year. My grandmother got an inheritance. I got like $2,500. I bought a car off a teammate, a purple Pontiac Grand Am Coupe, which in snow was good fun. And then, yeah, you just got to you got to figure it out. And then where I got screwed was because I was an international student, I didn't realize it was like $820 or $830. It turned into like $710 because I got taxed. had like a withholding that I didn't know about. And I was like, and then my rent was, so my room at Point Guard and I rented an apartment together about 10 minutes from the campus. which was just under $800 a month. So that's $400 just gone. Then I've got $300 left for food and petrol, and I'm 10 minutes from campus. So I was like going and then minus every month, and I'm like, holy shit, like I can't afford to eat. So I was eating off like, sometimes if we didn't have team meals or whatever, or I could take food back to my place, I'd be eating off like Wendy's dollar menu or McDonald's dollar menu, like $3 or three cheeseburgers. And then I had to get a job. I got a job at a local sports bar just to make some money in the preseason to build up a bit of a buffer. So then I was okay, but I wouldn't change it for the world. Like, it made me have to appreciate getting to where I was. But at the same time, looking back, it's bullshit, because like I said, my number 4 jerseys is selling for $100 in the bookstore. I can't get $1 out of that. And I'm like, I can't take a girl to the movies. I can't, like, it's a bit ridiculous. Whereas now it's probably gone the other way. Now they're throwing all kinds of money at guys with the NIL stuff. But back then it was a slog for sure.
So what sort of contracts are guys that are in your position now, prospective number 1 draft picks, getting to go to specific colleges? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because the NIL, because it's part of the tax code, so the international guys can't make money from NIL in the US,
right?
Which screws them again.
Yeah.
But there's guys making $1, $2, $3 million a year to go to some of these schools, and that's why the transfer pool has become so big now. Because schools will just be like, "Come to our school, we'll give you $1 million," and they're getting 300 there. So they're like, all right, cool, and they're just moving around. But what it's creating is no loyalty. It's creating no grind. No, players aren't pushing through adversity. You've got a coach that isn't playing you as much. Instead of having to earn your minutes, now they're like, I'll just transfer. I'll just go over here. And it's kind of become a huge business now. I think it's gone too far the other way. Whereas back when I was in school, if I would have just got, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 a semester just to be able to go out maybe once a week, go to a nice meal, go to a movie, king. Like,
yeah.
I'm like, $5-10 grand max a year. That's all I wanted. I wasn't asking for millions of dollars. I just wanted to be able to at least live a half decent life, right? And that was kind of a disappointing thing back then, but they've gone too far now, I think, the other way.
Well, you kind of see that in our game at the minute now. You might have a young first round draft pick or someone who's come good, but then obviously potential, like, they've been told how good they were from the age of 15. The work ethic may not be there. They've got through on raw talent. Mm-hmm. And then another club goes, well, we've got an extra $200,000 a year to potentially throw. You know what I mean? Oh, we deserve this. Yep. I'm moving over there. So that's the battle that the AFL have on their hands these days as well. So you had 2 years at Utah.
Yep.
Really popped off. You won Player of the Year your second year. Was there a chance to get drafted in your first at all, or was that more of a developmental year?
There was. I think if I would have entered the drafts, maybe late first, early second, somewhere around there. But I knew I wasn't ready. Like, my body, I think I was 100 kilos my freshman year. So I was wasn't strong. I needed to work on my body. Spent another year in the weight room, and then got up to about 110. So put another 10 kilos that second year, and then just swept every award my sophomore year and played really well. We took a team that wasn't even picked to win our conference. We won our conference. We ended up going to the Sweet 16, made the top 16 in the nation for a team that wasn't picked to win our own conference. So we did really well there, and then ended up going. And to be honest, I probably still wasn't ready to go to the NBA after my second year body-wise. Like, back then it was like Shaq, Yao, Ben Wallace, these absolute giants that are strong and physical, and you had to be kind of physical and strong in that league, like to survive in the 4-5 spot. And I knew body-wise, I was like, I'm only 240 still. Like, I need to get to 250, 260. And I still wasn't ready, but I had to go. I was, as the season got closer towards the end, my second year in college, it was like, first round pick, late first round, mid first round. The closer it got, it was like top 10, top 5, top 3, probably top 2. So I'm like, I can't risk going back knowing that I'm not ready, completely ready, to then risk injury or whatever, risk all that money on the table and setting yourself up for life. So then I went over and kind of used that rookie year as a development year. I wasn't horrible, but I wasn't great. I think I was in between. I was average as a rookie and had to work on my body still.
So at what stage through that year did you think, righto, this is the year? Because I've watched the highlights. You're obviously Player of the Year, absolutely yamming on everyone, cleaning the boards, making opponents look second rate. So you say that was halfway through the year where you're like, nah, this is the year. It looked like I'm going pick 1 or 2.
No,
who was 2 as well? Sorry.
No, what I mean by the year was it just my star got brighter and brighter as we got closer towards the end of the year, because I was, Utah's a mid-major. It's not a high-end basketball school. It's probably a mid to, whatever. So there was some attention coming into me into that second year. But what changed for me was between my first year in college and my second year, I went to the Athens Olympics in 2004, and I made that team and started at the 4-5 spot. And that's what gave me confidence to, I played really well, played against Team Duncan, played against Team USA, played well, held my own, had my ups and downs. But for, I think I was 18 or 19 years old at the time, I'm like, shit, I'm going back to playing against boys again. Like,
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I feel real confident now. I've just played against grown men that are, you know, NBA players that are all-stars, that are Hall of Famers. I'm now going back against 20-year-olds. Nah, like I'm killing everyone. And that was a mentality I had. And then I just jumped off a trampoline from the game one and just like was like bam, bam, bam. And then it got to a point where like the national media and everyone had to notice what I was doing, putting up big numbers, playing really well, we're winning a lot of games. I think we had an 18 or 19 game win streak at one point and playing really well. And then that's when all the attention came with that. So basically after around the new year, the attention really started to pick up, and I was in running for all those awards that I ended up getting, and that kind of propelled me to be a top draft pick.
A lot of people that listen to this all know what AFL draft night's like. What's NBA draft night like?
It's interesting. For me, it was quick.
Yep. Yeah, bang, straight off.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like I flew basically anyone who wanted to come up, family wise. I think my grandma came up from one side, my auntie from Croatia, my auntie from Australia, my sister, my mum, my dad, my trainer at the time who was from Melbourne, and then my college coach and my agent, and two agents actually. I had a Euro agent and an American agent, and we made an event out of it. Like you kind of have to go there a couple of days early. You know, I remember we did all the media stuff a couple of days before, and then we had, I think 2 days before the draft, my father and I went to upstate New York and just went on a fishing trip. Just got a tinny and rolled down one of the, I don't know what it's called, one of the rivers up there in upstate New York, and just like sat in the water for all day, just get out of the city.
Cool.
And then came back, and then basically was right in it. You're basically preparing for the draft, getting your suit, doing all that stuff, and then we go to the green room, and you just, it's kind of awkward because you're with other blokes and there's still that competitiveness of, so I'm better than he, all that kind of stuff. You can sense all that in the room. And then I got called first and was backstage doing media within 2 or 3 minutes of the draft. So it was kind of cool. I had a good friend of mine that I trained with, a Croatian guy who was also in the draft, who was projected to be a second rounder, and it was bittersweet in a way because we were really close and we worked out all the way up to the draft, just him and I together in Washington, DC, and he didn't get drafted. So it was I felt really bad for him because I was hoping he got drafted. But then he nutted up and still came to the after party with me and celebrated with me. And we had a crazy night, just a lot of drinks that night, rented out a whole restaurant. And it was a pretty emotional, interesting day. Like I didn't think I'd be there. Like it's just one of those things that you're like, there's no way I should be here. I'm coming from where I've come from and the journey that I've come from, but to get there, you're like, man, it's pretty cool.
That's nuts. And then you obviously go to the Bucks with pick one. The comp is in such a different position as what it was when you got drafted, and so are the Bucks. What was it like getting drafted to Milwaukee, one, the city, but also to the organisation? Because it seems like since they got Giannis, really, that they've just...
Yeah, it wasn't a lot of success when I got to Milwaukee. It was kind of a revolving door of a franchise. It was kind of a franchise that people didn't really want to stay. So if you got traded there or signed there for a year or two, you were trying to get out and go somewhere else and just improve your stock and get out. It was a team that wouldn't overspend. They'd always be in the kind of the middle, just floating about. They were kind of, mentality was more like if we make the playoffs, we're happy. That's never a good mentality. You never want to have that mentality, I think, in any sport. You want to try to build towards winning it, whether it's in a year or 2 or 3, whatever your process is. You want to aspire to that. You don't want to set a goal of like, let's get 8th one day. I just look at it that way. I'm like, you want to try to, you got to be realistic. Like if you've got a squad that's not going to win it this year, you want to set some realistic goals, but you still want to try to win. That's and then if you don't, then you reassess from that. So that, and just a lot of changes, a lot of coaching changes, a lot of instability, and it just didn't work for a while. And then we finally had some later, 2 or 3 or 4 years into my career, and then they tried to reinvent the wheel. They had a really good squad, a couple of older guys, a couple of younger guys, and then they try to nitpick, oh, we're not going to pay that guy, we can find better there, and then it went back down again. So you just one of those things where you had to battle through. Small market, no one really cared about basketball too much in that city back then, Green Bay Packer town, and it was hard to kind of, just get some kind of I guess momentum into being decent. But look, once we started playing well in 09 and 010, the city did start getting behind you. And I enjoyed living in Milwaukee besides the weather. Like the cold was just really hard to deal with. I thought coming from Utah that'd be okay, but it was really bad. Like it was freezing, man. It was a whole different cold than I've ever experienced. But as far as the city and the town, blue collar, hardworking people, I really enjoyed the people there, and I grew from kind of a boy to a man in that city. So it's always got a special place emotionally for me, where I just feel like I have good memories back there. Good, bad, ugly, different phases in my life. I spent 7 years there. I really enjoyed that part of it.
And then what were your expectations coming in as pick one personally, but then also did you feel a certain expectation from the organisation as well, being picked as highly as what you were?
Yeah, look, you feel that pressure. You definitely feel that pressure of like, we should be good straight away. I was one of I think there's only 3 number 1 picks that made the playoffs their first year. I was lucky to make the playoffs the first year because you generally go on a really bad team. So we were actually okay, we were competitive. But you got to kind of put that aside. And like I said earlier, I knew I wasn't going to come in and set the world on fire my first couple of years, just because my body needed to put some weight on, some more strength. I needed to figure out the NBA game. And my journey had just been playing at a basketball at an elite level for me. The window was so small. I never, from 11 till 15, 16, I never played elite basketball. I was playing rep, but I wasn't never in the state programs. I was never in that high level of stuff, of that day-to-day grind. So I was still catching up, and it took me a year or two to figure that out. But looking back, it just had to kind of take it every day. I had really good games, had really bad games. I was figuring all that out, and that's the whole point of your rookie year and even your second year to an extent, is just figuring out the ebbs and flows of the NBA. It's a roller coaster, and you can't get too high, can't get too low. Like I remember preseason game, playing bad one preseason game and being pissed off after the game and angry, and like a vet comes up and like, we got 90 more of these, man, including preseason games. Like, relax. Like, you got to forget about it. If you dwell on it too much, it's going to carry on into your next game. And that was always something I try to remember, but it's easier said than done when you kind of, and I guess when you're younger and in juniors and that, games mean a whole lot more because there's less of them. So like you're playing junior basketball, state basketball, even college basketball is 30, 40 games. So every game's much more important. The NBA is like 82. So it's like,
see you tomorrow.
Yeah. You gotta kind of switch off, maybe you reassess after, watch some film, and then you move on. You can't be like, oh, I shouldn't have done, what do I do there? And then you got a game the next day and you go into that game with the wrong mindset. So it's a whole different beast of mentals, which, I wish I knew then what I knew now about everything. Definitely would have helped, with age comes all that wisdom, but that's just how it goes in life.
And then you're going into the new beast, it's the NBA. Were there any moments initially that you just pinch yourself and you go, this is a whole another beast, like purchases or what guys are rolling around in or the houses that guys are living in?
I didn't get involved in that stuff straight away. Like I remember just going, I went to a Louis Vuitton store with Tony Kukoc in New York once, and I had no idea about luxury goods, and I didn't even know this stuff existed. Like I didn't know there was bags that were $15,000, $20,000. I had no idea, right? So I go into this store and I'm trying to be a baller with Tony Kukoc because he was like an idol of mine. He was on the team my rookie year, and he's like, he bought a few things. He's like, that bag's really cool. I'm like, oh, Tony said it's cool, I'll buy it. So I'll grab that. And he's like, that watch is cool. So like, I get to the counter, and it wasn't too crazy when you look at what other Louis Vuitton, but it was, it was like 10K or 15K worth of stuff. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what am I doing? Like, and I had no idea. I thought it'd be like a couple of grand, like whatever. Yeah. Like, but that's, that kind of stuff. But yeah, like some of the guys, you'd see some of the cars they're rolling around in, new car every month, new Bentley and new Ferrari, new Lambo, and you're just like, man, it's like a whole different world of just spending. So my whole thing was like, I've finally come into some money, like don't be an idiot and lose it all straight away. So I was really kind of conservative with the way I spent early in my career to make sure that I had it later on in my career.
Well, you mentioned cars. You're a car enthusiast yourself. What do you have pumping around at the minute?
Fair bit. Downsizing at the moment. Just it's getting a bit too hard to maintain all, but mainly got a mix of Mustangs, Brock Commodores, a few HSVs, a few Ford GT Australians. So I've got a really random mix. So the purists of either will probably hate me because I like Holden and Ford. I like different eras. Like I like 60s Mustangs, 70s Ford Australian GTs. I like a lot. But then I like HSVs, Holdens once you start talking about the 90s or even the 80s with Brocks. So I like different eras of cars, and I can appreciate any car if it's a nice car.
Yeah. And we'll go to the end of your tenure at the Bucks. There's a vivid image in my head when you've gone up for the fast break and then Amari's come up underneath you, and was it left or right side?
He was on my left, yeah.
And then you've done your wrist.
Oh, my right side.
Oh, you're right.
He was on my left.
Yeah,
my left,
and you've just worked your way up your arm and pretty well shattered everything, right?
Yeah.
So how long were you out there?
I wasn't out too long. I was stupid. I came back way too early. I broke my. I remember having the MRI the next day. So first they went back to the locker room and I'm asking for the whistle, which they don't have in the US. They're like looking at me like, what are you talking about? I think it's an Australian thing, the whistle.
Yeah, the green whistle, where the guys start. Yeah,
that doesn't exist in the US.
Right.
They're just like, what do you mean? I'm like, give me the whistle. But I was like, losing my mind, like in pain, right? Because my elbow's basically pointing towards me, right?
Yeah.
At this point. Shit. So I get back to the locker room. I walk back to the locker room and they're like, we need to pop it back in and your pain will subside. It'll be much better. Like, I'm like, all right, fucking do whatever you have to do. Hurry up. Just give me some pain, whatever. And then, it's all frantic in there. I'm abusing people. I'm swearing, whatever. So they're like, all right, bam. They put it on. They had an X-ray machine in there, so they put it under the X-ray while they're about to find where to put it back in. They snap it back in. I'm like, it's the same. Like, what are you doing? It's the same. Like, it's still killing me. And they're like, oh. And they're like, they start talking. They're like, all right, something else is obviously wrong. There was a bone that broke off.
Right.
In there. So like, they've obviously, the dislocation's been popped back in, but there's a big bone just floating around in there. So the pain's the same.
Yeah. So
I get the MRI the next day, full dislocation, broken bone, broken wrist. I think both sides were chipped. And then got to the index, 5 hours in our MRI. I got to this index that was broken. And I'm like, I'm not doing no more MRIs. I don't care if the other fingers are broken. I can't sit in here anymore. I was like, in a bloody half cast, on that hard surface. And so, it took me a while to just even get out of that cast. But I was back on the court. I did it in February or March, I want to say, somewhere around there. I think it was just after All-Star break. And I was back on the court in September, stupidly. Should never have been that quickly, but I was the whole thing of like being one of the franchise guys, want to be back. The team, I think I just signed an extension not long ago. They invested in me. I was trying to give back, and I had some other injuries along the way, so I was cognizant about not being injury prone. And I couldn't at that point. Still couldn't extend my elbow. I still can't. But I was like, it was getting to like there, and it was one of those things where we'd rehab it with physio, and we'd get it to here, and then it wouldn't go back this way. And it was like that for months. So like if you went the other way too far, it wouldn't go the other way. So then my shot was just screwed, like completely screwed on, like couldn't extend properly, couldn't follow through, was getting a bunch of pain and kind of like a residual nerve pain every 5 to 10 shots randomly. I just feel like someone stabbed me in the elbow. So I played through that whole season. Yeah. I was taping it up and just being an idiot. And I was using my left hand more than I usually do. Luckily I have a left hand. And I kept complaining about, I'm like, something's wrong. And they're like, the trainer's just kind of like, suck it up, mate. Like you've hurt your elbow, just suck it. It'll get better. I'm like, nah, like something's wrong. My elbow's killing me. Every now and then just it gives out. And then at the end of the season, I had a scope and there was a floating bone they'd left in there that they hadn't cleaned out properly with a scope that they'd missed. And that's what was hurting me. So I've like had the surgery, got it in a jar, taken it back to the trainer and be like, fuck you. Like, yeah, there you go. Yeah, like this is what I was complaining about. Like you made me feel like I felt like I was a hypochondriac. I was like, something wrong with me. Like, do I just think I'm hurt when I'm not? That's what make me feel like. Yeah. Because I just want you on the court. Like, just get on the court. Coach's job's on the line. Our job's on the line. If coach gets fired, like so it's that whole push-pull thing. But that injury was definitely a changing point in my career.
So how far after that until you got traded?
So then I played that whole season. I actually played pretty well defensively that next season and then came back the following season. It was a lockout year. Come back to Milwaukee, start of the season, after about a month, we're around about 500, not playing well. And I went to management and I said, look, let's just move on. Like, get me out of here. We'll move on amicably. I won't ask for a trade publicly. I think it's the ship sailed. Like, we're both we're at our wits' end. The club is with me. I'm with you. I just don't think it's going to get any better. You can still get, we're not going to get value back. You're one of the top 5 bigs in the league at the moment. We're not going to get good value. We're not going to do it. And I'm just like, I really, So then as it went on, agent kept saying, like, can we do something? They wouldn't really entertain it. They didn't want to trade me. And then the lockout comes back. I play like 10 or 11 games in. I snap my ankle. I get undercut by Kyle Lowry. Shoots a floater. Tries to get his own rebound. I jump to block it. He goes right under me. Perfect angle, bam, snap my talus on my left side. So I try to run it off and I'm like, this isn't that bad. I go back to the locker room. I can't get my shoe off. My ankle was like
blew up.
Massive, right? I had to cut it off with scissors. Done, right? So then then Milwaukee's like, we can trade him now, even though his value is probably lower. At least we can salvage something, because the coach was on the hot seat at that point. They needed to get to the playoffs that year. So they made a deal which was great for them. They got Monte Ellis and Epe Udo. They ended up making the 8 seed. Didn't save their job, but they ended up having at least a decent finish to the season. I go to Golden State, and that's kind of how I ended up in Golden State. And Golden State was worse than Milwaukee at the time, record-wise and franchise-wise. Like, had one good year in 20 years. It was a shambles. Like, no one wanted to be there. And so I get there, and then that's kind of where we started kind of the resurgence of that place. Yeah,
the dynamic of the way the trades work in American sport is, I find, so interesting, just due to, like, we can't get traded without consent. You can go in and ask.
That's employment law, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. So I had no idea that you said, let's try work something out here. Let's try get me out of here. Like,
not publicly, yeah. So a lot of players will say it publicly. Like, get pissed off at a certain point and be like, just make a trade demand. Now they have to fine you for it in the NBA. But and that's the beauty of the free market. I think it should be that way. I think I know AFL players wouldn't like it, but I just think that it makes so much theatre being able to do just trade guys on a whim. And yes, it's harsh, and I'm part of it. I've been part of it. I've been traded before when I didn't want to get traded. But I think it's a good part of the game, and I think it creates a lot of talking points and media points. But yeah, in Australia, we've suggested it. Try to push it for the NBL. Well, why can't we do this? And then it always comes back to employment law. If the player says no at the end of the day, that's why you guys can nominate.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Was it hard to say goodbye after, I'm sure, as you said, Milwaukee holds a close place in your heart?
Yeah, no, but you realise in that business, once you move on, you move on. Like they forget about you, and you got to forget about them. Like, I still had some loyalty as far as in my heart about growing up. I lived there for 5-6 years, a big part of my life, right? Bought a house there, was active in the community, did a lot of charity stuff there, and you just, once you move on, you move on. They forget about you. There's another star coming in, and that's how it goes. So that's what you got to realise. Like, it's no hard feelings, nothing personal. That's how the sporting landscape goes. For every player that leaves, there's another one that comes in they love just as much, and the kids buy those jerseys just as much. So you just have to kind of live with that.
And massive call for Golden State as well. So at the time they had Steph and Monta, the two great guards, and that's when they've really decided to lean into Steph there. And you get to Golden State. Were you aware, or the organisation aware of what you really had brewing there?
Well, first off, I believe Steph was in the deal. I think the Bucks turned that down.
Right.
Yeah, so I was really close with our physio, and she had both the medical reports on her desk, and they had huge concerns about Steph's ankle, as did Golden State at that time. Like, Steph had huge issues with his ankle. He couldn't get healthy.
Yeah.
Kept retweaking it. And I believe Golden State was in a position where they were like, take either one, let us know which one you want. And they went with Monte. So you look at, like, historically what that's accomplished and the genius of the Warriors as well.
Is that known?
It's pretty well known.
Yeah.
Like, it's come out, but I know I was good friends with the physio.
Right.
I knew for a fact because
it's there.
Both the document. And I was, because I was still in Milwaukee, because I'd had my broken ankle, I didn't fly out. I flew out within 48 hours of the trade, and then I had to go back to Milwaukee to get all my stuff, and then I was still doing rehab as well for my ankle. So I was still seeing the physio, the old team physio that I used to. So it's 100% fact. But it just, now you look at what's happened historically. It's like Steph was always our guy. That's how the sliding door moment, right? Like, you just people sometimes don't know, and it's a lot of luck has to do with building NBA juggernauts and teams that win long term. It's a small little thing like that just ended up having so much success for them long term.
Yeah, well, they get lucky, right?
Yeah, it was a bit of luck. Like you go the other way, and maybe Milwaukee has that dynasty, and because Monte Ellis was a great individual player, I don't think he was what Steph brought to the Warriors. So that's where it becomes real interesting, and everything can change.
So your first year, coming off an injury to a new organisation, how do you go with working your way into the culture of the club? And I'm assuming from what I pick up, so Steph's on whatever he's on now, 50 mil, right? Mm-hmm. He is the franchise at that stage. Like, he's the main player, all those sorts of things. Like, is there much of a dynamic there? Because in Australian sport, we have such a big thing, or connection, culture. We all need to be mates because that's how you get the best performance. Sometimes it seems like, as much as it is a team sport, it's like quite individualised. You're just like, hey boys, I've got my rehab to do, or how does that work? Yeah,
90% of teams are like that, very individualised. Steph was one of the few stars that I really enjoyed because he was very humble, very open with his teammates, would hang out with his teammates, and it wasn't a fake hangout. Like, sometimes you'll see guys just, I need to do this because management said I'm the max guy. Yeah. It was just natural to him, right? And we had that with him and Clay, like both genuine good guys, right? So it makes a huge difference. But generally in the NBA, that's the huge issue. There's a big disconnect between guys making 50, 60 million and guys that aren't. And it's just getting worse and worse because the disparities now between what players are earning from the top end to the bottom end is further growing, but it does make a huge difference. And I think Steph does a really good job of that. That team did a really good job of that. We had really good guys, Andre Iguodala, Harrison Barnes, Festus Ezeli, Draymond Green, like guys that were like in it for winning and were good people, want to be around each other and all that kind of stuff. So it definitely does make a difference. And that's, you got good teams, and then you got good teams. And generally you'll have a lot of teams that just their stars can't get along, or there's pouting about touches or minutes, or why are they getting this, why am I not getting this? And that happens on court and off court in the locker room with access to family members. Like, why does his wife get to travel when all that shit happens, right? It's a big dynamic. Where the good teams, it's not really a huge issue. But with 80-90% of teams, half the challenge is that it's just making sure that everything's kind of okay, and there's no problems.
So you see Steph, Clay and Draymond, right, all have come out with their own personalities probably, well, since you got there. How is it seeing them develop as the outspoken, bubbly individuals that they are now?
Yeah, it's interesting. They've all gone a different, Draymond was always going to be the more loud, kind of in your face, not afraid to call things out. Steph's much more calculated and kind of more PR-y, savvy with the way he does things, and really strategic. And Clay doesn't give a shit about any of it. Yeah, Clay's the opposite. Clay's just like, give me my boat and my dog and leave me there for alone. Like, so they're all different in their own way, and it's just cool to see the way that they've progressed in different ways and continue to win, and they're going to go down as Hall of Famers in the NBA. And
I'm sure people would assume that there's a lot of skill involved, but these guys that have turned themselves into greats of the game and Hall of Famers, like, I'm sure their work ethic was second to none. They're doing stuff behind closed doors that a lot of people wouldn't see.
Yeah, especially, like, look, Steph and Clay, Steph especially, Steph has it. What I mean by that is he's a guy that has, let's get this hat and try to get it stuck on that camera. He'll have it within a certain amount of time. He's one of those guys. He's just like, he'll figure out, he'll look at it, he'll throw it a few times, he'll get it. He's one of those guys. But on top of that, his work ethic's unbelievable. The time he puts into his shot. So you put those two things together, it's unbeatable, right? So then most people have one or the other. Like, they might have the talent, they probably don't have the work ethic to match it up, or they have the work ethic but just don't have it. Like, they can get grindy, get there, and have a career, but you look at Steph, he's got both. Clay's also, very automatic with the way he shoots the ball and puts a lot of time in, but there's no secret to it. You got to put time and effort in. But Steph is one of those rare ones that if you had two people and gave him the exact amount of work ethic from a young age, Steph would still be on top because he just has it.
Yeah.
And I think a part of it is too that he played a lot of sports growing up. He played a lot of different things. He's an intriguing mind. He likes to be intrigued by different things and games and sports and all that kind of stuff. And I think that definitely helps.
And then we'll get to the 2015 season. Yeah. So at the start of that, did you think it was going to eventuate to where it did?
No. Like, we had a really good year 2 years before that, made the second round, took the Spurs to 6 under Mark Jackson, come back the next year, we lose to the Clippers in the first round during that Donald Sterling crap. We lose in 7 to them, to a tough Clippers team, and they kind of had our number. And then they make the coaching change and everyone's like, what is going on? The Warriors finally had 2 playoff years after 20 years, besides the We Believe year in 08, the most success they've had in back-to-back years. And I guess management saw our roster was better than where we were finishing. And I think we were, but to say championship would be a stretch. I think we probably should have definitely been competing the second, third round. And then it just a small tweak from Steve Kerr around some things and rotations and all that kind of stuff, and momentum just took off, and we just became an automatic team that just played together really well. Everything was automatic. We didn't have to overthink stuff. We didn't have to overdo offensive sets and defensive sets. It all just became a perpetual. Steve Kerr always calls it a perpetual flow motion of just read and react on both ends of the floor. And because we had high IQ guys, you could do that. You can't do that with every team. We had guys that all were at the upper echelon of basketball IQ. They could just play off each other and, he's doing that. I know he's going to do the, I got to go here. Like, it was just automatic. Whereas there's a lot of players in the NBA that need to be from point A to point B, and I'm sure it's the same in footy where not everyone can play that open style of game, but we had it to a T, and it was the most beautiful basketball, one of the most beautiful styles. That and the Boomers of 16 and 19 to me were the 2 best styles of basketball I've played.
Yeah, and then so in the finals you've beaten the Cavs where LeBron James is playing. What's it like playing against the King?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the whole dynamic of him carrying that team and getting him to the finals. They had some injuries that year we won it, and Daly had a really good series that series. But yeah, LeBron's always tough to scheme for. Especially in those grind finals types games where everything slows down. It's just so much more at his advantage. So, it's easier said than done winning that series. And obviously we were down 2-1 as well and came back and took the series, won 3 straight games and made an adjustment, went small, took me out of the majority of the lineup. Festus, and went with Draymond at the 5, and we called it our small ball lineup and played that for the predominantly the last 3 games for heavy minutes and ended up winning us a series.
Yeah. How does it feel in a moment like that when they decide at a crucial moment to go?
Sucks. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You hate, I'm the starting center the whole season, the whole playoffs, first couple of games of the finals, first 3 games. But when you look back, you're like, it made total sense. Like that lineup was kicking ass. The plus minus with those small lineups with Andre at the 4 and Draymond at the 5, they had no answer for it. You got a ring out of it. So would you rather, playing all 6-7 games and losing the series, but playing 30 minutes, or getting a ring and unfortunately having to be benched for a couple of nights? It's not great for any athlete to hear that. But within the team dynamic and, just 2 or 3 games, you got to do it. And you look at the series as before, how effective I was, especially against Memphis, guarding Zach Randolph and Gasol, influential in getting through to that final series from that, and even some of the games before that. I think it all makes sense. Yeah,
it does. Initial feelings after winning it, and since have you had time to reflect on? You speak about not really being around the mark as a 17-year-old. To how well were you when you won?
Yeah, I mean, it's just how hard it is to get one of those.
Yeah,
you look at most decades in the NBA. One team's probably taken 2 or 3 of them a decade, generally, the way it works. Yeah. Like you look at the Bulls, they got 6 in a decade. The Warriors have had, 4 in a decade. So there's not a lot of room for other players to be in that club. So to be part of 15 players every season that get one of those, historically, there's not a lot of championship winners. So very, very, pleased to have one of those. It's a great talking point. It's great memories. We'll do our reunion soon. 20-year reunion is probably coming up sooner rather than later, and just being able to reminisce on that. I think what everyone talks about when you win a championship or just when you're part of winning teams isn't like so much the celebrations and all that. It's everything leading up to it. It is the shit and the good and the bad games and the bad road trips and the good road trips, and how do we were down here that month, how do we get back to here? That's what you remember. You remember all that stuff. You don't remember like the champagne. That's kind of like, okay, great. It's a dressing on the end. It's 1% of what we've done, but it's all the stuff, and remembering the resilience you had to have and the ups and downs and the things you have to give up from family and missing birthdays, all that kind of stuff that gets you in that spot to be a champion. And that's what you remember.
You talk about bad road trips. Like, what does that look like? Like, we go play away, we lose, we come back, righto, dust your hands off. You guys go away for, what's the longest you've been away for, and what does a bad trip look like?
7 in 11 days, I think. 7 games in 11 days or 12 days, something like that. Well, yeah, it can spiral out of control. So if you start a road trip bad, you lose 2 straight, you don't want it to be a 0-7 trip. That's what, you got to salvage it. One thing we had with the Warriors was we had a goal never to lose 2 games in a row, period, whole season. And I'm not sure if we did. I don't think we got to 3. Maybe we got to 2, but if we got to 2, I'd hate to be that team that played us in that potential 3rd game losing streak, right? So that's the interesting thing about it. Yeah, you got to really put it all out there when it comes to that stuff. But it's all mindset for us, and we were really good at just making sure that we didn't lose easy games. But the road trips can get hard, and get daunting. It's the travel, it's landing at 2-3 in the morning, having games the same night. You just got to make sure you try to, like I said earlier, like not dwell too much on the last game, and make sure you focus on the next game and get that win. But we're every team, every player, we've all lost games that we shouldn't have lost on the road, that you've just kind of, I wouldn't say you've ticked the box or you've checked out of, but you're like, oh look, 7-game road trip, we're 5-1. I remember we were going to Milwaukee one game and we're like, had a really good road trip, and then we just shat the bed because we're just so tired, and everyone was just kind of like, who gives a shit? You know what I mean? But as much as you don't like to say it, coaches know, they're like, 5 to 10 games are a write-off every season. There's going to be 5 to 10 games that no matter what you do as a coach, no matter what you do as a player, at times guys are tired, guys have been partying, guys are banged up, you're just going to lose those 5 to 10. Just make sure they stay to 5 to 10. If they get to 20 or 30, that's when you start having some issues, and then you got obviously the coin flips of buzzer beaters and all that, and then you're not in the playoffs. So you can allow a little bit of leeway on some shit nights, which is completely different footy, right? Every week's so important. But yeah, that's coaches don't say that out loud, but they know. They know there's generally 5 to 10 that they're like, if we get one of these, it's great, but you just don't want to spiral into more than that.
Talk me through the partying. What do you mean?
Oh, everyone's different, man. Like it's much more individualized. It's not really like you'd see in the movies where the whole team just going somewhere and partying. Yeah. Everyone does different things. Everyone's got different vices. Some guys play video games till 4 a.m. Some guys go lounge bar and like more upscale places. Some guys go doof clubs. Some guys go strip clubs. Some guys, just bring girls to their room. Everyone's doing different shit. So there's like the amount of moving parts in a hotel, NBA hotel, the NBA teams are staying at, there's a lot of shit going on. Yeah. There's a lot of shit going on. So, but yeah, I mean, the partying, when you're in the NBA, just everything that you do is at a VIP level. So, everything you want, anything you want, you get really. And we got to go to the best nightclubs, the best restaurants, no matter how sold out they were, no matter how many, we can't fit any more people. We're always let in. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a dystopian view of the world once you come back to retirement, that all that access is pretty much gone.
Yeah, I could imagine. We'll go to the next season. So 2016, 73 win season, most wins ever by a team in a season. Talk me through that year. Like, you obviously spoke about the year before, seamless basketball, one of your favorite systems to play in. Yep. What's it like going through that? And I'm assuming you didn't lose 2 in a row that year?
No, I don't think you did. Yeah, we were just the same thing. It was just a perpetual motion. It was just flow. It was just automatic. It was autopilot. And then obviously not getting the championship killed us just because that really hurt. There was a few fellas that were kind of cognizant of, once we had a chance, we knew we had a chance to get the record, which was about 15 games left. There were some guys that were like, look, if we get it, we get it. Great. But let's not push all our chips to the table just for that record and then burn out. And then there were some guys that were like, nah, this is history. We need to do this. There's an argument for or against both. I was more of kind of like, let's just make sure we're healthy and win the championship, because if we don't win that, the record doesn't mean shit. And that's kind of, not saying I was right, but that was a couple of guys' concerns, was like, make sure we're right. And then we have suspensions, some injuries, and Cleveland stole a series from us. Rightfully so, respectfully so. They did a really good job of stealing momentum. But just that season was automatic. Like we won so many games that year we shouldn't have won. Like we had so many games where we didn't rock up for 3 quarters, or things didn't go our way for 3 quarters, bad whistle, or some guy was hot for 3 quarters. We're down 15, down 10, down 12 in the fourth quarters, and just we'd reel it back within 3 minutes, and you just see their soul come out of their body, and they're just like, we were up for 18, 20 points this whole game, and now they've got it back within 3 minutes, and then they'll just lose. And we had so many games like that we just stole games.
And then it's well documented, obviously up 3-1 in the finals.
Yeah.
Did you get injured in game 4 or 5?
5, yeah, I got hurt. So Draymond got suspended for game 5. We were up 3-1 coming back home. Just beat Cleveland in Cleveland, coming back home for game 5, and Draymond gets suspended. So we're up against it already. They were already kind of, the way it works is they already had the champagne ready in the back just in case. And then I J.R. Smith cannonballs into my knee. I completely hyperextend my knee, bone on bone, can't move, just swells up. I'm out for, I think I was out for a month. I was out for like 2 months, almost missed the Olympics with that. And then I miss 6 and 7, and the Draymond comes back, but the momentum started to shift. And in those, that's the beauty of a 7-game series. That's what I love about it. No matter what, you have to win 4. No one cares that you've won. And we won our first 2 games in Golden State. We smashed them. We smashed Cleveland, beat the crap out of them. But it doesn't matter. They grinded out and got 7. They got 4. They got first to 4 wins, and they won the series.
Do you reckon if you don't get injured, you guys win it?
If my I probably can't say this, but if my auntie had balls, she'd be my uncle. But
but
it's hard. It's hard. I mean, there's so many moving parts. If Draymond doesn't get suspended and I'm healthy, I think we win the series. Yes, because our momentum was playing so well and we're at home. But the Draymond thing really cost us as well, and that's been well documented because it just changes. It changes our rotation, changes our flow. Our small ball lineup now can't go as small as it once was. Then we're going to try to put another piece in there. Then I've got to play more. Then Preston has to, it just a lot of things change. And then once you get that balance out of whack, something seems a bit different. And then everything kind of grinded down. We tightened up. We couldn't make shots, and they took advantage of it.
And then I'm interested so then in not too far away, you find yourself in what I'm sure a lot of NBA players find themselves in. It's you get traded to the Mavs, traded to the Sixers, traded to Philly, right?
Yeah, didn't report.
Yeah. Signed by the Cavs, 4 days later, broken leg.
Yeah.
And then 2017, signed by the Lakers. You didn't play for the Cavs after that, after the leg? No. And then waves. So that seems more like what a lot of the other guys experience in the NBA. So through that, you kind of go from being a solid contributor, star, one of the best defensive players in the comp, but then you go through this whirlwind in a couple of years. Like what's going through your mind? Or do you feel like from that you see a greater representation of what the grind of the NBA beast is?
Oh, it was hard. Like, I'm not going to lie. I knew, so I was moved for contract purposes. So I had 12 million remaining on my contract. They needed to free up salary to make room for Kevin Durant. So you're like, no brainer. I'd trade myself to make room for Kevin Durant. And then we go to Dallas. Dallas wasn't very good. Dirk was still, that was his final year, I believe. That didn't work. That didn't go too well. So around about All-Star break, they were like, look, my agent and Dallas kind of said, let's just buy out or trade. I said, let's see if we can trade first. They ended up trading to Philly. Philly wanted me to report. That was when they were really bad. And I'm like, I'm not going to report. Like, I'd rather latch onto a veteran team. And then they waive me and then go to Cleveland, break my leg in the first 30 seconds on the court, or like the first 2 minutes on the court. And then, just all spiraled. You're just like, holy shit, what just happened this last 6 months? It all just kind of went like that, right? And it made things hard. Go back home to Australia, rehab my leg, come back from the broken leg, go to LA. They give me a non-guaranteed deal, just pending health. They said, look, if you're healthy, we'll keep you on. They lied. I was healthy by the cut deadline date, which was January. Was playing, I think 7-8 minutes a night off the bench. They still waived me because at that point they were pretty much out of the playoffs. They were going young. Cool, no worries. So they waived me. I'm like, oh shit, okay, what now? And then I was meant to wait till after All-Star break, trade deadline, to see how all the trades went. And then after trade deadline ends, some of the veteran teams that were going to the playoffs would have a roster spot to bring me in the buyout market. So I'd have to stay in the US for about a month or two just working out, which I then did. And then my grandfather died, so came back to Australia. went through the whole process with the funeral. My wife got deemed a high risk pregnancy. So we weren't going to fly her back to the US knowing that. She had only had about 4 months left till birth. And then I was like, okay, so I'm going to go back to the US by myself without my firstborn and without the secondborn coming, without my wife, for a vet min deal, which wouldn't be about money, to latch onto a playoff team that I'm not going to play that much for anyway. I was like, nah, not going to do it. So I just called my agent. I said, I'm not going to do it. There was Toronto, Boston, I think OKC and someone else that wanted me to come after the deadline. And I was like, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just going to chill out, get my leg right. And then that's when the NBL thing, came into the works.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how you navigated family life and your private life with your profession being overseas. How did that dynamic work?
I just never put it in public.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no one knew.
You're right.
I just never was a guy that was. I don't want to put my wife on Instagram. I don't want to put my kids on Instagram. I'm not judging, but people that put their kids on social media, I just kind of always like, not for me.
Yeah.
Like there's reasons, as most people would know, as to why you probably shouldn't do that these days.
Yeah.
With everything going on. So I always kept that part away. Like no one. My wife's relatively unknown, and that's how I like it. I just don't think she needs to be in that spotlight. I can handle all the shit thrown at me. I can handle the good, the bad, the ugly. I've been through PR training, and not that I use it very much, but I've been through all that kind of stuff. I understand how the dynamic works with the media, with social, with clubs. Like, to throw her or even family in that is just not fair, and I've always tried to keep them away. And she thankfully has never been one to want to be in the spotlight with all that kind of stuff. So I've been pretty lucky because that's pretty rare these days.
Yeah, you touched on you come back and then the whole NBL Sydney Kings stuff happens. Can you talk me through how that all comes about?
Yeah, so obviously having a newborn, we had one that was just born in 2016, so just on 2 years old, and then had a newborn that was just born. And I'd obviously just said, I'm not going to go back to the US this season. I'll just wait it out. And I'm like, okay, well, I want to kind of not settle down, but I want to calm this lifestyle down now. I've had some injuries. I've got 2 young kids. I knew going back to the US, I'm going to be on these 1-year deals again. And I'm going to be in the same position I am. That by deadline, you might get traded, you might get thrown into deals. You're a veteran guy, you're expandable contract. You're basically an expandable, like the movie, right? You're just going wherever, and you might. There's been cases of veterans being with 5 teams in a season, 6 teams in a season. So I'm like, well, I'm going to move my kids and my family. I was like, I just didn't want to do it. So I was like, you know what? Let me kick the tires on this NBL thing a bit. And that's how I kind of thought. I like the idea of 1 game a weekend, maybe 2. You're home 5 to 6 days a week. You're not traveling all the time, and you're still playing basketball. And it ticked the box for me that it kept me still playing at a high level to go to the Olympics in 2020, which was going to be my final year of Olympic basketball.
Yeah.
So it all just kind of made sense, and that's kind of what I went towards. And then ended up doing the deal, and the rest was history with that. Yeah,
and with that deal, was that part ownership of the Kings at that stage?
Yeah, so I actually had the deal done with Melbourne United first.
Right.
And we it's been well publicised. I don't get into it too much, but there was an agreement reached in principle verbally, and then in the contract it was a little bit different to what we agreed in verbally, and I just didn't like that, and I backed out of the deal and went to Sydney and said, this was what I agreed to verbally. If you give me this, I'm yours. And they're just like, yeah, okay, done. And that included 10% ownership. And then signed that with Sydney and went over there.
Yeah, where do you see the state of the NBL now from when you started?
Oh, obviously, light years ahead of where it was. Even when I first got involved, it's improved dramatically, and just the names and people and, business people that are involved in the game now completely changed, and that changes things. You now have premium business people and corporations wanting to be involved in the game. I think it's actually a good product in the Australian sporting landscape. It's different to everything else. It's indoors. It's a good summertime sport, and basketball's growing rapidly in Australia. It continues to grow. So I think it's in a really good spot. Still a lot of work to do with different things, but I think the league in itself competitively as well, he's getting better and better. I mean, there are some threats. Japan is spending a crap load of money in their league. They're poaching a lot of our really good players. New Zealand's actually doing a pretty good job as well with their national league. And then you've got, China, they have open checkbooks, and a lot of the EuroLeague teams as well. So we're competing with a lot of different parts of the world. But people like the NBL in Australia, because of the stability of the league, you're going to get paid on time. You're going to get paid what's on your contract, even though it might not be as high as your EuroLeague, not EuroLeague, but some of your European deals might be higher, but you might not get all that money.
Yeah, right.
They might not pay you. What are you going to do about it? That's how it works over there. Like, you have a 5-game losing streak. It's noted that guys are like, I haven't been paid for a month. Yeah, win some games.
You're kidding?
It's a different world up there. And that's what you try to tell guys is like, yeah, you're signing $800K, but the 500 in Australia, you're going to get for sure. So that's where it's interesting. But the NBL, I think, is in a really good position. Probably hasn't been in a better position than it has been today.
Yeah. I hear you speak, and I can, in your voice, speak so passionately about the Boomers and like what that has meant for you. Do you want to touch on that? Like what the Australian basketball team actually means to you? And I also, it made me piss myself. I saw the new uniforms. Stevie Wonder playing a role there.
Yeah. Not good. Well, I mean, AOC now trying to backtrack and say that Basketball Australia approved them. Well, it's like, I don't think they really had that much of a choice, but it's clear that, no offense to ASICS, but they're a track and athletics brand. It's just like, probably should have got some help with the uniforms. But look, the Boomers are just always been something that I've enjoyed doing. I think it kind of always took me away from the business side of what the NBA was that I didn't like, to back to like, felt like grassroots basketball to an extent. Now the national team's somewhat changing, and there are some issues there where it's, with this whole influencer, social media, kind of business of the NBA, it's starting to get, spool its way into the national teams now, which we hope doesn't happen full threshold, but it is just the reality of the world. But just always enjoyed just going road trips with guys that you grew up playing with, and just it's a bit more normal. I would say it's more basketball focused, and kind of we try to leave all the other bullshit at the door for the most part, which can sometimes become a bit of a job at times, to make sure remind guys that like, this is the national team. We can't do that. We can't do this. We're here for a month. Suck it up and let's get on with life. But on the flip side as well, we have demanded and increased the conditions for players. We don't get paid to play for our national team. I don't know if people realise that.
No, I had no idea.
Socceroos, Wallabies pay a shitload of money, fly private. We're on putt planes for the most part, with 6 connections sometimes. It's not that bad, but that's what they used to try to do. They used to save money by sending us via Antarctica to places, and it's gotten better now, but we've fought for a lot of things for players to just make sure they're in better conditions than they were. Yeah,
are you still involved in any capacity?
A little bit, yeah. I'm helping Basketball Australia with some things, and I anticipate probably getting involved a little bit more after this next campaign. But it's definitely a lot of the older heads try to help the program as much as they can, informally and formally. And there's a lot of people that are really passionate about it. But it is a program that needs upkeep. It needs to be maintained, that the cultural standards remain, because you can slowly kind of see some slippage in different areas, even when I was involved, because just the way the world's going. The way the world's going is everyone's looking to get their own little piece of the pie and make things about themselves sometimes, where we really try to keep the national team about the national team.
That's all I've got for you for basketball, mate. That's all I've got. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. What keeps you busy now? I know you've got your podcast, you've got In Conversation and Rogue Bogues. So one's basketball, and you've just started up In Convo. Do you want to touch on what they are and what your passions are now?
Yeah, I do the podcast stuff. So everyone that probably follows me knows all about that stuff. Basketball shows, Rogue Bogues. We did some car stuff. We did a bunch of different stuff. Do my journey, which I haven't done one for ages, which I need to do. It's the biography type thing. But I just started the In Conversation series, which is a separate series. And I just think it's something that was lacking in Australia, that I've been looking at, casting my eye over for a while and just observing. And we don't really have any long-form conversations about uncomfortable conversations.
about comfortable topics, whether it be socially, politically, sporting, whatever it is, things that are taboo and not allowed to talk about. No one does. And, you look at, ABC News, Sky News, 7 News, it's a 2-minute grab on an important topic that it's just not enough time. So I want to get people on that can talk long form, whether right or wrong. I want to get people that I disagree with. I want to have these conversations. And we've had one guest, Senator Malcolm Roberts, who's actually in Queensland, and it was, I think, 3 hours and 20 minutes of just talking about the current landscape of Australia. And he's a senator in the Australian Parliament. So that was a really, really good thing that I learned a fair few things about the way the Senate works and all the kind of nitty-gritty details of things. And I think we need more of those conversations. That's why I've started it. So hopefully it starts a kind of a conversation in the community about different things and just trying to learn about what's going on in Australia and the world.
Yeah, and so you've obviously put yourself in a position over your career, obviously getting paid well through the NBA system, but to be able to be in a position where you're not held accountable by anyone but yourself, right? So what's it like to be in a position where you can generally say whatever you want to say, like your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of always been pretty opinionated. I've always been taught to answer a question with what you think. Don't tell people what they want to think. And that's kind of looked upon as wrong these days in certain instances. But I'd rather know where you stand, where I stand, where everyone stands, and then we figure it out from there. So I've always been that way. I did it even, it's just been more magnified now because I'm doing it even more. But I did it even in my career. I got in trouble numerous times throughout my NBA career and whatnot for stating my opinion, whether it be behind the scenes or formally. And I just think that we need to get back to that in society to be able to have honest conversations about things, right or wrong. And I think you don't want to have people scared to say things and then just saying behind the scenes. I think that's cowardly and worse and doesn't help us progress, even the uncomfortable conversations. So that's where this the conversation is hopefully encouraging people not to be afraid. And yes, I have nothing to lose really. Like there's nothing you can really take away from me. They have though. Like I've lost things. I've lost financially for sure with my comments and views and not being scared to call out.
Can you talk through some of them?
Oh man, there's heaps of brands and marketing people that have been either told not to work with me because I'm don't know what he's going to say, or there's been informal layers of people that have been maybe government or whatever that have said, don't do a deal with that guy. We've got a bit, which is, I knew that was going to happen to an extent. And I don't really care too much, but it does happen. Like to say, and people say it's conspiracy theory. It's like I've got actual hard evidence, like from people that have said, we wanted you to do this, but we got, nipped at the heels by X, Y, Z. And it's like, yeah, whatever, like what are we going to do about it? Like, so it does happen, but I don't need it. And I'd rather work with people that are, I guess like mine or like myself, like to actually work with people that they can disagree with. I think part of being an adult is a proper adult is to be able to disagree with people amicably and have conversations and be like, what, I disagree with your point of view, but I respect your point of view. That's being an adult. Being a child is like, you have a different point of view, I hate you.
Yeah.
You're not going to progress as a society doing that kind of stuff. And I'm passionate about my point of view, and I've been wrong numerous times. I've admitted I've been wrong numerous times. I've made mistakes. I think we all make mistakes, and I'm not afraid to say that. And that's what pisses people off the most, because it's like, a lot of these people that are cultish on either side of politics or social issues or whatever it is, that they'll never admit when they're wrong.
Yeah, it's just their side.
Yeah, it's like I've definitely been wrong. I've definitely researched things further and been like, shit, I might have made a mistake there, and then we move on. But these days, that's kind of taboo.
Yep. Who next guest? Can you disclose anything? Who's coming up?
We don't have anyone locked in right now. But yeah, we'll try to, we take feedback. So a lot of our fans have put people forward, but yeah, we do anything from athletes to celebrities to even just someone doing good things in the community, just people that are interesting, just want to talk to people that are doing different things. I've had some people that want me to have some farmers on and just talk about the plight that they're facing right now with all of the emissions, laws and taxes and this and that, and the windmills they're putting out in the middle of nowhere and all this stuff, and how it's affecting what they're doing in numerous different agricultural areas and farming and that kind of stuff. So I'm interested in that kind of stuff and just trying to really talk to different people and get their message out. Because a lot of these people have really strong messages that are really heartfelt. They just can't really get any the mainstream media is not going to let them on, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So I enjoy talking about that stuff. And then even just the COVID stuff, like, hate to rehash it, but all the stuff coming out now.
Yeah, exactly.
That we're hearing that it's like, actually,
it's off the shelf. Or just even
one of the, whatever you call them, health advisors just said, three boosters might have been enough in hindsight, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, mum and dad got 10.
Yeah, but it's like, now you can kind of say it, but now everyone's like, oh no, let's just forget about it and move on. It's like, well, you got to be able to have these conversations. And I think I would have liked to have had these conversations when we're in the heat of all this stuff going on, when it was a really dark time in our nation. I think with all the lockdowns and all that, that's when we needed a conversation to happen that was both sides of the fence, pro-lockdown, anti-lockdown, super pro-vax, probably not, maybe an anti-vax, someone in the middle. Have these conversations in an open forum so people can actually be informed, not just be told what mainstream media is telling them or the government's telling them. So that's kind of what I think is important in society.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask on potential guests, have you extended the olive branch to Dan Andrews? And you can discuss his medal. You can discuss his medal that he received not too long ago.
He gets a medal. I mean, that's, how anyone that was locking people down, their own people down, gets a medal is beyond me. It's a big issue with our country that's what people are getting awards for these days. But yeah, definitely not a huge fan of his. But
people would pay to see that. You know that.
What's that?
Subscription base. You and Dan go and
I'll have him on. Yeah. I'll definitely have a chat to him. I don't think I'll get any answers. I'll get all those answers like, I'll take that on advisement. I will let you know. I'm not sure. And the standard political answers. But the one thing that makes me smile is knowing that he can't walk down the street in Melbourne without security. In the CBD, maybe he can get away with it. But if he goes out to the suburbs, wants to just go for a walk down in Lawn on the beach someday or Geelong or something like that, just by himself and just get an ice cream or whatever.
Can't happen.
Can't do it. So that at least makes me somewhat happy considering the damage he'd done to people in that city.
Behind the scenes, is it just you? Do you have a team? In your studio
I keep it pretty small. I don't have a huge team. I have a producer right now who does some stuff for my podcast. Trent, shout out to Trent, does a really good job. But with this kind of work, as you know, a lot of these young guys are trying to move up to bigger and better things. And we're always looking. But yeah, we generally just keep it low key. I manage most of the stuff myself. I don't get too crazy. I have someone just post all the stuff on socials and all that, and that's about it. I don't have a huge production. Like I've come to find out a few other basketball players have, staff of 5 to 10 people doing all their stuff. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm more a principal guy, so I pay for great quality work, but I keep it kind of pretty simple. I don't need a whole team of people. I'm not that big time.
Mate, that's all I've got for you. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for talking about your career and open up about what you got going on.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Good man. Very well. Good work, hey? Oh, look now. Oh, yeah, you're going to... Oh, Zoolander. It's Salvo.